I'm going to come into the modern world and read the scripture from my phone. And there's only one reason, I don't usually do this, but there's only one reason that I'm going to do it. I'm reading my translation, and I forgot to print it. So fortunately, I have it somewhere here on my phone. Let's see. Face ID. Okay, this is a passage. This particular one, it says Deuteronomy 5, but I'm going to read this passage from Exodus. There are two passages of what we call the Ten Commandments. And one is in Exodus 20, and one is in Deuteronomy 5. And I'll talk more about the difference. There's only slight difference as we go along. But here's the passage from Exodus. And my translation, I translate from the Hebrew. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I don't think the other translations are perfect either. So here's, and I've been working on this for many years and used much research, as with all my translations, but this is my translation of the passage. Then God spoke all these words. I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of the place of misery, out of the house of slavery. Now it is possible for you to have no other gods before you. Now it is possible for you not to make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve idols, for I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of parents to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my teachings. Now it is possible for you not to make wrongful use of the name of Yahweh, your God. For Yahweh will not acquit anyone who misuses the name Yahweh. Remember the rest day and keep it set apart till you will love your neighbor as yourself. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a rest to Yahweh your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the rest day and consecrated it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that Yahweh your God is giving you. Now it is possible for you not to murder. Now it is possible for you not to commit adultery. Now it is possible for you not to steal. Now it is possible for you not to bear false witness against your neighbor. Now it is possible for you not to covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Amen. Politicians in Louisiana have written a law and passed it that requires in the fall that the 10 Commandments be displayed in public schools. The law stipulates the following. Public schools, public schools from kindergarten through college are required to display a poster or a framed copy of the 10 Commandments in every classroom, school, library, and cafeteria. Inspired by that law, politicians in Oklahoma went one step further. They said all Oklahoma public schools are required to incorporate the Bible and the 10 Commandments in their curriculums, effective immediately. The chief educational officer announced this in a memorandum Thursday, a week ago. I will not talk to you today about whether this is a good idea or not, but in the next few weeks, I will talk with you about what is called the 10 Commandments. Actually, the Bible does not call these words the 10 Commandments. Nowhere does the Bible call them the 10 Commandments. The Bible calls them, in Hebrew, it's Asheret Hadabrat. Now, your husband, Marcia, he might have some issue with the way I pronounced it. I read Hebrew when I was in seminary, and that was many years ago. But my professor said when I was reading Hebrew that I must be from southern Israel. But this word that the Hebrews called this text, this passage, means not the 10 Commandments, but the 10 utterances. I like that because it's the sense of these are the utterances of God. They're also called the 10 statements. This word is also translated as the 10 declarations and even the 10 words. There you may recognize a word from the Greek, Decalogue. Have you heard that? Decalogue, the 10 words. I love that because logos is such an important word in life and in the Bible. You remember John 1, in the beginning was the logos, the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And who was that logos? Jesus. The words, there are many words that come from the word logos, the Greek word logos. Can you think of some? Logical. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Logistics. What'd you say? Logarithm. Wow, you're up there. You should be on Wheel of Fortune. Logarithm. And one I'll give for us, theology and ecology and all those other ologies come from this word. And that's the word that the Greek uses for the 10, what we call the 10 Commandments. It's the 10 words, the Decalogue. Hebrew is a beautiful language. It's a picturesque language. It has layers of meaning. And all the rabbis have taught that we should not just look at the meaning that hits us at first. We should look into the passage and the words because there are layers of meaning. So when you're reading or hearing the Bible, we should remember this, that there are layers of meaning in the text. I do like the original meaning of the Greek logos. The original meaning of logos is relationship. Relationship. Isn't that beautiful when you tie it in with all these other words, utterances and statements and words? Relationship. Because doesn't it take words to build relationships? And that's the original meaning of the word logos, Greek. So we could say these are the 10 relationships. A relationship, it's like the word covenant. Covenant stands for relationship between God and people and between people and people. That's what relationship is all about. It's a covenant. Covenant. And I like to remind you as well to remember this when you're thinking about what we call the 10 Commandments over these weeks. That the original, according to the Good News of John, the logos, the word, the relationship, is Jesus. Isn't that wonderful? It's Jesus. And while you're at it, remember that Jesus is not dead somewhere in a tomb. If Jesus were dead and had not risen, he would be spinning in his grave in the world today. But Jesus has risen and is alive. And in fact, in truth, let's say, Jesus is with us. Not just up in heaven somewhere, but Jesus is with us right now. So when you think about the 10 commandments or the 10 words, remember that the word is Jesus. I'd like to point out that there are not 10 commandments in the 10 commandments. There are only 2. There are only 2 actual commandments in the 10 words. Do you know what those are? Well, that's not actually, that's in there, but it's not actually said in those words. Nope, those are not commands either. The 2 commands are remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's a command. Remember, it's a nice command, remember. Now that I'm getting older, I need to hear that a lot. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And the word holy, by the way, means set apart to you will love your neighbor as yourself. Somebody mentioned you will love your neighbor as yourself. That's what holy means in the Bible. It comes from the holiness code in Leviticus 19, and it has to do with loving your neighbor as yourself. So the other command, by the way, is honor your father and your mother. Now, it's not obey your father and your mother, because sometimes you probably shouldn't obey them if they tell you something to do that's wrong. And I'm a parent, and I've told my kids wrong things sometimes. And they do honor me, but they don't always obey me, which might not be a bad thing. Honor your father and your mother. And this is why this is the head of the second table of the word, of the 10 words. You will not kill, you will not steal, and so on. The idea here is this is the way you honor your parents. The way you honor your parents is by claiming God's power and freedom not to kill, and not to steal, and not to commit adultery, and not to bear false witness against your neighbor, and not to be greedy and covet what is your neighbor's. That all goes together. That's the second table of the law. I shouldn't say law. I don't like that word. Paul didn't like it either, by the way. It's not law. It's 10 possibilities. It's 10 possibilities. I'll talk to you more about that next week. These are statements of possibility. My preferred translation of the Old English, thou shalt not, which, by the way, the politicians in Louisiana and Oklahoma are putting on their posters. The King James Version, the Old English, thou shalt not, which sounds like a command, doesn't it? But it's not. My preferred translation is in modern English from the Hebrew. You shall not it becomes, in my translation, now it is possible for you not to do certain things. For instance, now it is possible for you to have no other gods before you. Now it is possible for you not to kill. What does this mean? What is God saying to us? God is saying, you have the freedom. I give you the freedom to act. But I also give you the power to act positively, to act in freedom, to act for good and not for evil. I give you that power. It's interesting to me, and I hope I'm not making a judgment on people here, but it's interesting to me that the politicians and the people in control in Louisiana and Oklahoma have broken several of the 10 words. Right now, Louisiana is about to execute someone by lethal injection. Thou shalt not kill. Now it is possible for you to change your ways. Now it is possible for you not to kill. Claim that possibility, and God gives you the power to act in this beautiful, meaningful, godly way. Looking at the whole first table of God's teachings, that's another way you could translate it. Instead of the 10 commandments, the 10 teachings, the 10 instructions. Looking at the first table of God's teaching, in covenant with the God who is present, that's what Yahweh means, in covenant with the God who is present with us, you have the freedom and power to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the possibility. That's the power. You, every one of you, even me, we have the freedom and the power not to obey the powers of darkness, but to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. In the same way, you look at the second table, and it says that you have the freedom and the power to love your neighbor as yourself. So important. It's so little done that your neighbor is yourself. You're connected with your neighbor, and your enemy is your neighbor. The stranger in your community is your neighbor. And your neighbor is actually everyone in the world, without exception. And you and I have the freedom and the power to go against the powers of domination and oppression and love our neighbor as ourselves. God did not give up on the people when they failed to claim the freedom and the power to live out these teachings. God did not give up on them. God stayed with them. And God has not given up on us. God has not given up on the First Baptist Church of Woburn. God has not given up on you, even when you have failed to claim the freedom and the power to live this way. Jeremiah tells of God's new covenant. He said, "It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand and brought them out of the place of misery." That's how they translated Egypt, misery. This new covenant, this includes the old covenant. It's all about the old covenant, but it's different in that it's not written on tablets of stone or on pieces of paper placed in a school library. This new covenant is a covenant within people, within you. God has written these words on your heart, within you. I say in the call to worship, on your desires, or you could say on your conscience. God has written this in you. So trust the God who is present, the God who is in you and with you and has written the word in you. Deep within them I will plant my teachings, writing them on their hearts. Then it will be possible for me to be their God and for them to be my people. They will need no further for neighbor to try to teach neighbor or kin to say to kin, learn to know God who is present. They will all know me, the least no less than the greatest. For I will forgive their guilt and remember their sin no more. Part of the problem with people, especially with those in power in the world today, is that they do not trust the living presence of God. We may be that way sometimes in our lives. Trusting that God has written God's teachings on our hearts and that the living God is actually with us and in us. The New Testament is just the words, the New Testament. It's just another way of saying the New Covenant. So the New Testament is all about these 10 words that are written on our hearts. The New Testament is about the presence of God in Jesus the ministry and teaching of Jesus, and the establishment of a covenant people of God, which includes Jews and Gentiles. Whosoever will may come to be a light to the nations of God's way. Now it is possible for you to love the God who is present with all your heart, mind, and strength. And now it is possible for you to love your neighbor as yourself. The present God does not control us or dominate us. The present God does not demand. The present God opens up possibility to us, the possibility, and gives us freedom and power to live the possibility of love. The politicians of Louisiana and Oklahoma should put that on a poster. And the people of First Baptist of Woburn, God says to you through these 10 words and 10 teachings, trust the living presence of God and live from the new covenant God has put in you.